Every Thursday night, you ask the questions, DT gives you his answers. No holds barred.
It's Q&A with Don Tony. This is your chance to speak your mind and be heard about anything.
Q&A with Don Tony. And now, your host, Don Tony.
You know, when I look at that intro and I see myself wearing sunglasses inside and a button-down shirt all the way open to my navel, thinking I'm John Travolta, this is the type of episode where I recommend everybody tune into the audio version of it. There is absolutely no need to watch the video for this one. We got to change that intro up a little bit. How's everybody doing? I want to welcome you to the latest Q&A mailbag. I am Don Tony, and I want to thank you very much for joining me. Remember, we do these every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how much conversation is needed. Just remember, when we do make this available for people to send in questions, we post it on in a community section on my YouTube channel. That is the easiest place to put it because it's visible. It's available for everyone. And not only that, I know a lot of you say, oh, why don't you do it by email? The problem with email that I have noticed, especially in the last few Q&As, when everybody's still thinking about Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes and a few other topics, people tend to send very similar questions. And you want to address everyone, but sometimes when you get 5 or 10 people asking a very, very similar question, you know, you got to kind of like pick and choose how you cover it. By putting it on a community section, everybody sees what everybody else is asking. So if you see that your question is already posted, maybe you just feel the need that, hey, I don't even need to ask it because someone else already did. So that's pretty much the reason why we do it that way. Your next one should be in 2 weeks, and definitely keep tuned to my shows. We will have plenty of announcements before we start recording the next Q&A, but I want to get into this. I know a lot of you out there on the video side of things are seeing a video version of this, and I'm doing this mainly because of one person, and that is Mercedes Mone. And for those tuning in on the audio portion of this without video, you do not need to tune into the video aspect of this. Listening to Mercedes and what she says and her attitude and how nasty she comes across, there's really not a need to check out the video side of it. But yeah, we will definitely talk about Mercedes because that was something that a lot of people were talking about very recently. Was she nasty to this fan? Was it justified? I actually have a few interesting thoughts on that, but let's do this in order. As always, Patreon and channel members, go to the front of the line. It's only fair. I want to give a shout out to Roderick Howard. He wants to know, what did I make of the little segment on NXT for 10-10-23? I almost said 10-10-10. That's an infamous date in TNA history. But no, 10-10-23, when NXT went up against AEW, and they showed a segment of Paul Heyman talking to Ava Raine in an NXT office. What I think about it, honestly, all that night was designed to do was to give us, and I don't like using sports as examples, but if any of you follow baseball, this is probably the greatest comparison I could put it. Pretend it's spring training, and just for the hell of it, pick your favorite baseball team. I'll use the Yankees or the Mets because I live in New York. Imagine during spring training, the Yankees face their AAA farm team. That has happened many years in spring training. The Mets, other teams, they will face in an exhibition game their minor league, teams. And it gets interesting when you do it because what happens if the AA or the AAA team beats the major league team? But it's a nice, interaction of the present versus the future, or those who may have kind of fallen off the rails and need a little bit of spicing and improving and just rehabilitating. To me, I saw NXT Obviously, to show, possible outlets out there that are going to sign the deal for Raw and NXT, that at any given time, WWE has such a loaded roster, they could put people on NXT and boost up numbers if needed. That's a very big deal. Everybody that it has this controversial or please pay attention, take note of me, notice me voice always thinks that it's simply just to piss off Tony Khan and AEW. Honestly, maybe Vince McMahon in his private surroundings gets his jollies angering Tony Khan, maybe Nick Khan as well. But, this TV deal is going to be close to $1 billion. And depending on how good this TV deal is, will determine if this stock continues to go down. So showing a potential, buyer, so to speak, that at any given time, if they feel, the ratings are a little bit down, we need to boost them up a little bit, WWE could say, no problem, boom, 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 boom. And they could, it might be a Band-Aid, absolutely, but it's a business at the end of the day. So obviously that was number one. That was their priority. The second thing, obviously, is because AEW was going up that night. And remember what WWE said several years ago to Tony Khan, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And a year or two ago, everybody would have immediately felt that AEW would have kicked NXT's ass even if stars from the main roster showed up. But, something else, that NXT roster, how many people from Ilya to others said that they never met Cena? They never met some of the wrestlers that showed up there. This was the future interacting with the present, getting a taste, getting a test. So there was a lot of reasons why that happened. But Ava Raine with Paul Heyman, that is just a little interaction, a little fun, Roman Reigns, the bloodline, supposed to be feuding possibly with The Rock down the line. So if you saw the screenshot or you saw the video that did not have any audio, it was almost like Ava Raine was angry at Paul Heyman. Do not read anything into it. This was more of taking some main roster stars and interacting with stars of tomorrow. That's all that was. Nothing else to read into. AEW talks a lot about their 4 pillars within the next 5 years. Who do I see being WWE's 4 male pillars and 4 female pillars? I hate the term pillars. I hate it. AEW did that more to book a pay-per-view main event match. If you notice, you don't hear the reference of pillars anymore in AEW. If you have pillars, they're pillars. You know what I mean? It was really pushed because that became a popular term amongst wrestling fans, and AEW was smart to capitalize on it. But, MJF came from MLW and the Indies. It's not like, he came up through the farm system and, is AEW is, Jay Cargill is probably the best example of coming through AEW, pretty much starting out with nothing. I don't like the pillars term. As far as who is going to be the stars of tomorrow, you look at NXT and you see Braun Breaker and you see Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes and Ilya Dragunov and, the list goes on and on. On the women's side, you look in NXT right now, obviously Lyra Valkyria has gone to the top of the list. Blair Davenport is tremendous. Roxanne Perez is obviously going to be a big star. But, in this day and age, unless you're Roman Reigns, unless you're MJF, unless you are in a huge, really well-written, thought-out storyline, no one person, no 4 pillars is going to be the focal point of any company. I saw somebody write a couple of weeks ago about the 4 Horsewomen. The 4 Horsewomen were never a faction. They were brought up all at the same time. And yes, they came up together, but they were just 4 women that really stood out in NXT, and people started, putting them together as a faction, and they went with it and was doing this, and that's fine. That is absolutely cool. But they never walked around NXT calling themselves really the 4 Horsewomen. I mean, other than maybe some, merchandise and exposure, but I hate using the term pillars. So honestly, I gave you a couple of examples of the future, but I don't consider them pillars for WWE in no way, shape, or form. Plus, who knows who's going to sign from AEW the next year or two to WWE if they land the MJFs. They already landed the Jade Cargills. There's some names that could come in and just rule, and they're not a pillar. In my opinion, Brian Pillman's NXT promo packages are giving vibes similar to the loose cannon. How well could that be pulled off in 2023? It cannot be pulled off with Brian Pillman Jr., Lexis King. If you are watching the video side of this, I have a picture of Brian Pillman Jr. on the screen right now. This picture is from 2022. This picture is over a year old. He looks exactly the same right now, even though they are doing the storyline that he is disowning the Pillman name. That is for storyline purposes. He does not hate his father. His father died tragically, did not do it intentionally, did not abuse him, did not neglect that family. It is the opposite. Brian Pillman Sr., I didn't know him, met him once through ECW, did not know him. But everybody had nothing but beautiful things to say about him outside of pro wrestling. Yeah, he had some issues, but that was more for pain. That was not for abuse. It was not more just for, casual or, just recreational. I think that's the word I want to use. This is not the Goldust situation where there was truly animosity between him and Dusty at the time. This is just to stir it up a little bit. Now, Brian Pillman Jr. is debuting next week as Lexis King. Let's see what he does. My vibe so far has been more of like Raven to a certain extent. The problem is that we have seen Brian Pillman Jr. too much in the last bunch of years that when Brian Pillman Sr. was a loose cannon, you really thought that he just flipped his lid, that he just, he was a couple of eggs short of a dozen, that he was really a loose cannon, but he obviously did it beautifully. You remember back a year and a half ago, I compared MJF to Brian Pillman. Just go on the YouTube and just do the search of the thumbnails from last year. You will actually see. I put the Brian Pillman symbol in front of MJF's face to simulate that Pillman shirt from ECW. To me, Pillman reminds, MJF reminds me more of Pillman than anything else. But as far as Junior, Lexis King, don't see anything loose cannon, and he is too good, nice, calm, to suddenly make us think that he has lost it, gone a little loony. So thank you for that. Mark DiMartino, shout out to you, my friend. Did the 2006 movie Nacho Libre have any meaningful impact on me or the wrestling community at the time? He was a kid growing up, and the film introduced him to wrestling. I believe it or not, Kev and I'm probably jumping the gun here, but next week, Kev and I are doing the next DTKC show for October 24th. What am I saying? September 20th. 9/24 is a holiday. Some people know why 9/24 is a holiday. Shout out to Joey, by the way. October 24th, Kevin and I are going to do a show, and we're probably going to announce that we're bringing back the 15 years of DTKC shows that have not been online for many, 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 many years. So we'll make the announcement next week. We haven't really talked about it yet and how we're going to put that back out there. It's not very easy, and there's a lot of expense involved. And honestly, Kevin and I just can't afford it. So we got to figure out how we're going to do this. But what does this have to do with Nacho Libre? We covered it. Kevin and I were doing shows when the movie came out. I think it was 2006. I was really not a fan of the movie. I thought it was too goofy. I will tell you this, when I watched it on home video like a year later, then I enjoyed it. because it was more about, him being impoverished and, him coming up with the restaurant and, it was goofy, but they did it in let me put it this way. I think my problem when the movie came out is I thought it was really a wrestling movie. And when I saw bits and pieces of it, it felt like it was mocking wrestling. When I watched the movie in its entirety on home video, I realized that it was not mocking or making fun of pro wrestling. It was a comedic way, with Lucha Libre and, coming up poor and everything else. And I liked the movie. Is it something that I would watch again? I don't think so. It was not that big of a deal, but, I'm going to look back to when the movie came out and when Kevin and I saw little bits and pieces of it, and I got to put that episode up so people could hear in live time our initial reactions in 2006. But initially, I was not a fan. But that is very cool if you became a wrestling fan because of it. I know you're not the only one that had said that back in the day, but that's cool. That is absolutely cool. I mean, I've had people tell me that simply because a wrestler was in the news or, something they were, look at Hulk Hogan, with all due respect. I know a lot of people despise him these days, but in, 1981? No, 1982, I think it was. No. 1983 is when Rocky III, I believe, came out. And he was still in the AWA at the time. And, I was a wrestling fan, obviously. My grandmother got me into wrestling in 1979. I was too young to understand what it was. In the early 80s, I was a wrestling fan. But when he was Thunderlips, and I've always brought this up, I picked up the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine after that, and I'll never forget it. It was a picture of Hulk Hogan as Thunderlips with his cape open, and it said Hulk Hogan at the crossroads, wrestling or Hollywood. And I just got infatuated even more about Hulkamania and just got that much deeper into being a wrestling fan. I was already huge on Snuka and Backlund and a few others, but that was the turning point where I became a rabid wrestling fan. And it was because of his appearance on Rocky III. There's other things that obviously attracted me to it as well. But, sometimes you become a wrestling fan in a very unexpected way. So that's very cool. Speaking of history, Gary Vaughn, did my father try to get me and my brother interested in martial arts, and what inspired my dad into dedicating his time into martial arts? For people that don't know, my dad is a triple degree black belt. He's in his mid 70s now, so he can't even put on his pants sometimes. He ain't going to do no kicks anymore. But back in 1977, my father was on ABC Wide World of Sports. They did a karate competition, and my father was in the competition. And we have the VHS tape somewhere. He was on TV, I think, for 6 or 7 seconds. But it was the coolest fucking thing to see my dad on ABC TV in 1977 in a martial arts competition. He didn't win nothing. But my dad, was a teacher in a school. He would do it at night. He did it more as a hobby than anything else. He loved karate back in the day. But I will tell you 2 things very quickly. Number one, my dad absolutely tried to get me and my brother to learn martial arts. But the reason why he wanted us to learn was the reason why he learned it originally. My father came to America when he was an infant. My father wasn't even 2 weeks old. In fact, there's a true story. In 1949, actually in late 48, my dad was born, I think December 25th to December 26th. And my dad came to America on a boat. January 6th is when he arrived in New York. And they put on the registry that my dad was born January 6th. So we've always celebrated his birthday as January 6th. That's what's on his birth certificate. That's what's on his legal documents here. But my point is, my dad grew up in Brooklyn in the 50s, as a teen, 60s. And at that time, those neighborhoods were not very good. It was very, very Italian. but they were not safe neighborhoods. A lot of fighting, a lot of poverty. My father never graduated high school because he had, me when he was, 18, 19 years old. So my dad learned martial arts to defend himself because, people would get beat up all the time on the streets and people would get robbed. And that's how my father, learned it. My father became triple degree black belt and, he wanted us to learn it. And I think I went maybe once or twice to the school he was teaching back in the 80s, and I couldn't do it. No way. Never really pursued it. Oliver, I know on a recent sit down, I think it was the week before, I answered your question about Jake the Snake Roberts and Bray Wyatt. Were their promos very similar in style and tone? And, as we said on that sit down episode, no. Some of my absolute favorites cutting promos, but Jake Roberts was just maniacal and just, he's just intimidating, just really, really scared the shit out of you and really you get so deep into his promos, you almost mesmerize when he would talk. He was so good with that. Bray Wyatt was more about a cult. Bray Wyatt reminded me more of Waylon Mercy than Jake the Snake Roberts. But I know we already had that conversation, but thank you for sending that. Noob! He's got a Kairi Sane question, and I have a pictorial answer for you. How would I book her return to the WWE? He would like to see her come back for Survivor Series, help out Asuka, deal with damage control, and she has a score, maybe to settle with Bayley. I absolutely agree. Kairi Sane, you almost feel like WWE will put her on Raw just to piss us off. I want Kairi Sane on SmackDown. I want her to reunite with Asuka. I want the Kabuki Warriors to return. Yes, the tag team women's division is very, very weak right now. So it's going to be a hard sell to see, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter defeat Asuka and Kairi Sane, or, Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, not taking anything away from them. This is not the women's tag team division from 3 or 4 years ago. So, I would love to see her back on SmackDown. She definitely could feud with Io Sky. She could feud with Bayley. She could even feud with Asuka if you want to do that. She could feud with Charlotte Flair. You got Bianca Belair, and who knows? A year from now, maybe Jade Cargill. So there's enough women on SmackDown that she could feud with. I do not want to see her on Raw. My thoughts on Nick Aldis becoming a SmackDown GM. He thinks he'll be a great GM. Not just because of who he is, but, they're both, him and Adam Pearce, former NWA champions. Could we see them two wrestle each other down the line? I would love to see Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce get into it a little bit. I don't know if we're ever going to see Adam Pearce wrestle again. I think we will see Nick Aldis get physical. Maybe it'll happen on a house show, but I truthfully believe that we're going to get Team Raw versus Team SmackDown at Survivor Series. It will not be a War Games match. War Games will be more for the Judgment Day and the Bloodline and, all the foes of theirs. But it doesn't mean you can't have a Raw versus SmackDown, for bragging rights. I absolutely love it. Nick Aldis is an excellent talker. And the funny thing is, I wish WWF had GMs like this in the 80s. Nick Bockwinkel was there for a short period of time. He worked behind the scenes, did a little commentary. They kind of played him as a WWF official. But if he would have been a general manager and cutting promos like Nick Aldis is doing right now and having some segments, obviously the 80s was totally different time and was handled differently. But Bockwinkel was so good on the mic and professional. Bockwinkel would have been one of the perfect GMs. WCW utilized him in that way to a certain extent back, I think, in the 90s. I think it was early 90s. I don't remember the exact time frame, but Nick Aldis, I absolutely love it. I love it. And, sure, I guarantee he's probably a little bit disappointed that he's not wrestling right now, but that doesn't mean that he can't hit the ring down the line. But you don't want to do that too much because he is simply the general manager. And I don't mean that lightly, but he's the GM. And you want to really instill to the casual wrestling fan who do not know much about Nick Aldis that he is a GM. He's not a wrestler, active wrestler playing GM. So this is the transition now to life after in-ring competition. But I think we will see Nick Aldis back in the ring. Any thoughts on the NWA TV deal? Will it be a benefit in terms of ratings? It is too early to tell. You know, they are going to announce officially that they're going to be on a CW network. I got to see the day and I got to see the time. You know, I got into this last week a little bit. You know, when you dissect, you know, each day, it's very, very complicated. Like what day or time are they going to succeed? Can't do Monday nights. Tuesday nights would be a little difficult unless you do it at 10 o'clock, which I don't know. Wednesdays are out. Thursdays, yes, you have Impact Wrestling and New Japan, but they're not killing in the numbers. So you don't want to go up against either one of those promotions because you're going to just split numbers even worse. Friday nights, I don't think are good. Saturday, Collision has a hard time getting 500,000 viewers. So Sunday or late night seems the only time. So until we know what day, what time NWA will be on, I can't answer that. It is too soon. That time slot is going to be the be-all, end-all to try to figure out, you know, like how good is this going to... Listen, I brought this up so many times. If Impact Wrestling can't consistently get 100,000 viewers a week, and look at their roster right now. You got Trinity as the heavyweight champion. You got a lot of familiar names. You got Mickie James. You got a solid women's division. You got extremely talented Impact wrestlers. You got Will Ospreay there right now. You have Bullet Club Gold for quite some time. You know, you got some big names there. You're telling me that NWA is going to put something out there that is going to be even better than Impact? I wish Billy Corgan could. I am rooting for Billy Corgan. I have to wait for the official announcement to see what this is all about. I remember in the early 2000s, I think it was XWF might have been the name of the promotion. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I do know it was around early 2000s. And XWF was launched as a promotion. I think it was good. It was on Fox 5 here in New York. And we were all kind of excited because they had Ted DiBiase, they had, I get Sable on there, Roddy Piper, Emery Hale, which was going to be their Goldberg. And they had a lot of good young talent as well. I don't want to say AJ Styles. That might be wrong, but they had a pretty solid roster. And then I think we found out that it aired at like 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 a.m. and it died within a month. I mean, obviously it was not handled properly. If you want to get an interesting story that you probably never heard about, look up the history of XWF. I'm sure some wrestlers and Jimmy Hart have probably talked about it over the years. So, all right. George Ford. What do I think so far about WWE's product after the merger? I'm not saying this to brag, but before the deal was finalized, I said I didn't think much was going to change on TV. I think we would see a little bit more on the physicality side, but, and I mean, what I mean by that is, you know, WWE watered down a lot of moves, you know, because they didn't want to simulate certain, you know, shots to the head. And this, I'm not saying chair shots to the head are coming back, but you'll see like a lot more chops. You'll see a lot more physicality. Like, this is Gunther's perfect. Listen, I don't think I would have wanted Gunther in the WWE 5 years ago, but that's what you're going to see. It's not going to be a more adult because you still have to answer to the same advertisers and the network and the investors. Just because UFC is more adult, TV 14, just because TKO Group Holdings, Endeavor, you know, took WWE doesn't mean that suddenly it's going to turn into like, you know, a watered down Attitude Era. I always felt not much was going to change on TV. And the number one reason why I said that, and I think I've been proven right, is, you know, one thing that people feel uncomfortable with is change. You move to a different city, you move to a different state, you move to a different school, you start a different job, you do things different. People are afraid of change, and I think WWE, which has been doing spectacular. I mean, the Bloodline and Judgment Day have kind of hit some roadblocks. They might have depended on both of those groups a little bit too much, and it's starting the show. But in no time, we're going to be the road to WrestleMania. So it'll quickly, they just got to get through a few speed bumps right now. But, they don't want fans to be worried that the WWE that we have grown to love is going to suddenly transform into something entirely different because Endeavor took it. You know what I mean? So I don't think much has changed. I think the product is still excellent. In fact, on an upcoming Wednesday night Dynamite, I haven't picked the right time yet, but it would be coming up soon. We're going to have this conversation that I'm going to make into a video clip online because I think it's a topic that really needs to be emphasized. It's something I've been saying for a couple of years now. And I think the 10-10-23 war between NXT and AEW proved it, that Tony Khan's biggest error right now is thinking that his entire audience dislikes WWE for the most part or prefers AEW over WWE. There are a boatload of fans that watch WWE and AEW. And the thing is that if Tony Khan's going to put AEW in a situation where fans have to pick and choose which one they're going to watch, he thinks that 900,000 fans out there are watching AEW over WWE. I said 3.5 years ago, but I can't do it, obviously. I would love to put up a poll. How many people out there that watch WWE also watch AEW? You can never put a poll out there like that because people who despise WWE, even though they watch in the closet, will click off no, because they just publicly don't want to admit that they watch WWE. So that poll will never be honest. But you look at Tuesday nights with NXT, you look at Wednesday nights with AEW, you look at Monday nights and Friday nights with Raw and SmackDown. Look at all those nights on social media, and what do you see? The same people talking about the live shows. You don't see a whole totally different group of people talking about AEW, and they're nowhere to be found on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. It's the same people. And it's kind of mind-boggling that more people haven't picked up on that. And we've been saying it for 3.5 years. So change is something that WWE, Endeavor, TKO Group Holdings does not want to perceive to fans, and they've done a good job with that so far. All right, as I take a slug of my beverage, the beverage today, Zevia, ginger root beer, sweetened with Splenda. I know, I don't drink craft alcohol and scotch like JD. I'm kind of jealous at his choice of drinks. He's got a good liquor cabinet there, but me, unfortunately, I can't drink alcohol. I'm not diabetic and I'm not a recovering alcoholic, but I'm on keto and even a little bit of alcohol would fuck me up. So, all right, Rams fan, shout out to you. Let's say I got to see my grandmother for one day in 2023. Where would I go? What would be the one meal that I would take her out to eat or cook for her? Since my grandmother got me into wrestling when I was a kid, I would absolutely, if I had one, my grandmother died in 1991, everyone, by the way. I miss her dearly to this day. If I got the chance to hang out with her one day in 2023, I would take her to a wrestling event. I would take it to anything. It would be AEW, WWE, NXT. I don't know about the indies because I don't want it to be like, who's that? Who's that? Oh, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Like I would bring it to a show where there's some familiar names. Where I would take her out to dinner or cook for her, oh, that's easy. I would take her to Sizzler. My grandmother loved Sizzler when she was alive. In fact, one of my fond memories hanging out with my grandmother when I was in my teens, even early 20s to an extent. Once I got into my 20s and I just, I didn't see my grandmother as much and I kind of regret it because I had no idea she was going to die in 1991, so young. She was like, 62, 61? But she loved taking me to Sizzler. And that was like once a month, my grandmother, and she didn't drive. So we would either take the bus or we would take a cab. In Queens, there was a cab company called 41s and Lindy's. If anybody's from my neck of the woods, I'm sure those names ring a bell. But we would go to Sizzler, and she would eat steak and shrimp, and sometimes you have all you can eat. And yeah, it would be Sizzler. It's not even close. Raul Harris, what are my thoughts on the fan signing with Mercedes Mone and her response to the fan asking about her walkout of WWE? All right. I have the video. I think the only way that I can answer this where people would totally either agree or disagree is by letting you see and or hear Mercedes Mone's reaction to this fan. Now, I will say this kind of gives away part of my answer. Listen to the cadence and the attitude of the fan. Because in my honest opinion, this fan sounded more of like a dirt sheet writer or someone who, like if you did a media scrum, that's how it came across. It didn't sound like just an innocent fan saying, Mercedes, all this stuff being written online, is that true? I think she would have answered entirely different. But the way, in my opinion, this fan brought it up was that it was fact. And was she going to contest that? That was my initial reaction. But for those on audio, give it a listen. For those on video, give it a look and a listen. And this was the fan asking the question and Mercedes' answer.
I was New Japan Wrestling training you. I know that you had left WWE because of the creative issues. So
is that the reason?
That's what I read.
Oh, that's what you read. You weren't there. So no.
So what's the real reason?
Why would I tell you? Why would I just tell you?
I want to know.
You ain't gonna see my interview. You ain't gonna read my book. You ain't gonna see me in the future.
I do all of that. Yeah.
All right, then just wait. Our next friend, but you are. Then you just wait.
I got you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you. Keep on reading your fiction books, okay? What are we signing?
Listen to her. Don't listen to yourself.
All right. I'm not going to play the whole thing again, but I want you just to hear the fan. And I want you to listen closely. The way he words it, it's fact. It's fact. When the minute he saw her facial reaction, like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's when he said, oh, that's what I read. That's not how he worded it. He first worded it that it was fact. Listen to him once again.
I was New Japan Wrestling training you. I know that you had left WWE because of the creative issues. So
is that the reason?
That's what I read.
Oh, that's what you read. You weren't
there.
there.
He didn't pose it as a question. He posed it as a statement. And when she looked at him like, what? And then he's like, oh, that's what I read. Listen, I know some people in wrestling felt that Mercedes was too nasty to this fan. The fan paid money. The fan got autographs with her. I think he also got a picture with her. And that's cool. And yes, you should be nice to all of your fans. But honestly, I don't blame Mercedes for snapping at that guy. Because the way he sounded like a dirt sheet writer. And plus, there is a respectful way to ask. Like, if that was me, I would have said, Mercedes, you probably can't answer this, but I want to ask because I really, so many people have said so many different things. Did you leave WWE because of creative issues or walked out because of that? And she probably would have still said, look, I can't talk about it, but I'm going to, it'll be in my book and it's in that. I would have been like, all right, cool. Can't wait. But this guy, the way he's saying it, it sounds like he's trying to do a 45-second interview, to get like the story of the year that no one else had. One more time, listen to this fan and how he brings it up.
I was New Japan Wrestling training you. I know that you had left WWE because of the creative issues. So
is that the reason?
That's what I read.
Oh, that's what you read. You weren't there. So no.
So what's the real reason?
Why would I tell you?
He sounds like a dirt sheet writer. Sorry. Honestly, he deserved to get ripped. I know, maybe Mercedes has a pattern of not being the nicest person to people sometimes. I can't give her a hard time on this one. Someone had DM'd me Francine, the former ECW star. Very, very nice woman. I met her many times, and I've told that very cool story of something she did for one of my hotline callers back in the day. But she thought that Mercedes was a little bit too snippy. And I know some other women in wrestling have kind of said the same thing. Yeah, maybe she was a little bit too nasty, but honestly, I think the best way I could sum this up is this way. She answered him the way he asked her. Sounded like he was trying to grab a 45-second interview instead of getting an order. I think he is a big fan, obviously, went to meet her, paid to get autographs, but I think he also thought, I'm going to take this moment, I'm going to get the answer that no one else has. And the way he asked it, he perceived it as fact, and I think he deserved what he got. All right. We got 3 quick ones from Mr. Crazy Cruiserweight. If anybody's on Patreon, he has these scenario questions. Many times doesn't have to do with wrestling, but I'm going to get into them. Some people find these very, very interesting. Some people find it very, very creative. Some people find it both. All right. Here's one that he came up with called Point of View. So I would be in the body of a person, seeing what they see, dealing what they deal with, and everything else in between. Would you want to have that point of view for a day, a month, or for 6 months? So basically what he's saying is that you're a dentist, you're a chiropractor, or you're a pharmacist. Which one would you want to see their point of view for a day, for a month, for 6 months? For me, I would probably do the dentist for a day. The idea of looking inside people's mouths with yellow teeth and rotten and bleeding gums, and not only that, breath that smells like a mule that hasn't taken a shower in 8 months, or dead fish, I would not want to be a dentist. I can only imagine the stories that they must say after work. Oh my God, did you smell the breath on that motherfucker earlier today? Oh no. I would be a pharmacist for a month, and for 6 months a chiropractor. I actually am friends with a chiropractor, and Crowbar, Chris Ford, wrestler, is a great chiropractor. And, back when I met him the first time personally in 2002, it was at Chiller Convention. We actually were talking a little bit about chiropractic and the medical field. And I actually have been very interested with the spine and things like that. So that's what I would choose. All right. I'm having a bad dream where it almost feels real. Dream number 1. I'm a passenger on a Titanic and the ship is sinking. Dream number 2, I'm being attacked by a mountain lion on a hiking trip. And 3, I'm in a crowd of over 500 people when an earthquake starts to happen. Which one of these dreams would I want to wake up from the most? Oh, that's very easy. The mountain lion. The mountain lion. The Titanic, I would hope to maybe pull someone off the raft when nobody's looking and steal the seat. I know that sounds cold, but honestly, would I die for my parents, my wife, my bird, my dog when he was alive? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we all probably instinct. We would probably, put our, ourselves, our family before ourselves. And then we would be like, what the fuck was I thinking? But so the Titanic, I would try to survive, and earthquake, I would hopefully try to survive as well. All right, last question from him. I made the football team in high school as a freshman. 3rd string quarterback on a team. Did we do this on Patreon? I made the football team in high school as a freshman. 3rd string quarterback on the team, but I was mainly the punter for Kansas State. I was the punter and at times played extra wide receiver. I'm 6'4". I weighed between 210, 235 pounds when I was mostly a punter. I get drafted by the Cleveland Browns. While in training camp, coaches come over to me and request that I change my position to a wide receiver. Am I going to fight to stay as a punter, or am I going to switch positions to become a wide receiver? I would switch positions because if I failed, I could go back to being a punter. If I don't switch positions and I fail as a punter, I probably won't get the chance to become a wide receiver. So I would try to expand my game and then have different options. This way, if I fail at one, then maybe I could do well in the other. Kevin Milwaukee. He says, DT, excellent work. Thank you, my friend. He just found out Shayna Baszler. This is good. Shayna Baszler, one of his most disliked active wrestlers, because he feels that she only has 2 out of 8 qualities in order to be a dope wrestler. It turns out that she is a big Minnesota Vikings fan, which Kevin Milwaukee is a huge fan of, and D-Boy Gentleman, who is one of our family members here as well, and a longtime supporter. He had no idea, and he feels kind of guilty because he can't stand Shayna Baszler, but she is a huge fan of the Vikings, which is he. And yeah, there's a little screenshot of her at a Vikings game. Hey, listen, obviously my track record shows that I am a supporter of Shayna Baszler. I like her. We're going to do the PWI 250 this weekend on the Don Tony show. I already have my copy, and I'm going to make sure to bring up Shayna Baszler's number in the magazine because it's ridiculous. I think Indy Hartwell was ranked better by far over Shayna Baszler, which is a joke. Shayna Baszler may not be the most polished person, and maybe she'll never, change certain aspects of her wrestling repertoire, but wrestling bug bit her, and she works hard, and that's why I'll always have a little bit of appreciation to her. But hey, cool that she's a fan of the Vikings. It's very, very cool. Want to give a shout out to Nero Faye and everybody who is affected, whether you live in Israel or Palestine, or you live from afar and you have family, friends, or maybe you're just, one of those descents. He lives in Israel and he's going through, obviously, this horrible war that is going on right now. He is safe. His family is safe. And, he appreciates that the United States and other countries are standing up towards the battle against terrorism. And, I put up a picture right now hoping that peace prevails. I wish, peace would prevail. Unfortunately, it's been going on for so long. You might get a ceasefire and you might get some peace temporarily. But, when you actually have other countries supporting Hamas and other groups out there, it's going to be really, really difficult to eradicate it. But, we can't give up hope, though. His question for me, wrestling-wise, is Adam Copeland in AEW. Name his first 5 feuds. Say that fast 10 times. See, your question, I know some people are not going to like the answer because you want me to name his first 5 feuds, not my preference for feuds, because who I would like to see him feud with is much different who I believe he will feud with. And unfortunately, 3 guys right off the bat are all together right now. So you ask, name his first 5 feuds that are going to happen in AEW. It's Luchasaurus. It's Nick Wayne. It's Christian Cage. It's Ricky Starks. And the last one, I don't know. Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley. It could be one of those. I think AEW's milking of storylines is going to catch up to Adam Copeland very, very fast. He's been in AEW now for about 3 weeks, going on 4. And I'm not going to be one of those that is going to base, 3 weeks of AEW and call it a failure. But 3 weeks gone by, we're going to be approaching a month next week. And you don't feel like there's been a tremendous amount of progress. You know, when Christian told him to go fuck himself, 3 weeks go by and you feel like nothing has changed. And I think it'll stay like that going into Full Gear. And Full Gear is the middle of November. By then, he would be in AEW for 6 or 7 weeks. And how long is this sort of feud with Christian Cage going to last? 6 months? Is this going to turn into a Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland type of deal? I don't think so. Adam Copeland is one of their main stars now, and he will be treated as such. But his first 5 feuds in AEW, I don't think they're going to be all that strong, to be honest with you. I mean, I would have rather seen him realign with Christian, but Christian is so fucking good as a heel. I'm a little surprised they didn't think about putting Adam Copeland as a heel. Maybe they feel that Adam Copeland will not sell shirts if he is a heel. And I will bring up a good example. When was the last time you heard anybody really shilling Christian Cage shirts online? Most of the shirts you see being shilled are baby faces. So I think that they feel that Adam Copeland, money-wise, is better suited as a baby face right now than anything else. If you look at a lot of debuts in AEW, a majority of them have been baby faces. Once in a while, someone will debut as a heel, but even when they debut, the crowd still pops, giving them like kind of a babyface reaction. And I think that's more to try to, in the mindset that you could really only capitalize the most by having someone come in as a babyface. Unless it's someone that's never really been a merchandise seller and you don't have any creative ideas to push merch. I don't know how I feel right now about Adam Copeland in the first month there. I'm happy that he's on TV still. I'm happy that he's doing stuff. I'd rather see him feud with anybody than feud with nobody. But I think that specialness about him is wearing off very, very quickly. And I'm not trying to diminish or demean anybody else in that company, but I don't want to get the feeling like I do now with Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy and others, like, oh, they're on TV. Oh, that's nice. And, you want it to feel that it's a little bit more worth to it. MCP 5135. When is the next Forbidden Door? Not sure yet. We have some ideas. I don't want to do them just to do them. We got to have the right scenario. I was looking into interviewing Matt Riddle. In fact, I will just say it bluntly. He would come on if I want to interview him. I got that straight from him. He trusts that I'll do the right thing. And plus, I became friendly with, his girlfriend also. But I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't do interviews just to get press. Like, I want it to mean something. And there's a few things that obviously would have to be brought up with him that I'm not the person that should be breaking that. It's like for an Ariel Helwani or for a Chris Van Vliet, somebody bigger, not just a random podcaster out there, regardless, if I'm the longest running in history or anything like that. Kevin and I have talked in the past about bringing Cross on and giving you a side of Cross that 99% of people out there don't know. We'll do it soon. I'd love to bring on Vince Russo one day, maybe Bischoff, someone else, but I don't want to do it just to do it. I want it to mean something, and I want it to feel special, and I don't want it to feel like somebody's coming on simply because they're coming on. So, Javier Lee, do I consider Asuka a curse on the women's division besides Charlotte and Bianca? Some women she faces surprisingly get pregnant afterwards, like Becky, Alexa, and Carmella. No, Asuka is not a curse. The women's tag team championships for a little while might have been considered cursed because of the injuries, but no, I mean, you gotta, people fall in love, they find their significant others, and they want to have a family, and they want to have it young. So yeah, no, it's just coincidence that Asuka was, feuding with most of these women right as they became pregnant. I don't think they turned around to their husbands and said, I got to fight Asuka tomorrow. I got to fight her next month. Get me pregnant. It's no. Let's just say there's a War Games Survivor Series. Who is most likely to be the final member of Team Cody against the Judgment Day Bloodline Alliance? AJ Styles or Randy Orton? Who is most likely the scenario? Maybe Randy Orton. AJ Styles is a fine choice. I don't know in 2023 if that would be like unbelievable, amazing, holy shit moment. I'm a fan of AJ Styles. AJ Styles could still go. He is still a lot of fun on TV. But I don't think in the bigger picture, that would be like a mind-boggling, amazing surprise. Of those two, Randy Orton. What is the most likely scenario for The Rock at WrestleMania 40 if Cody and Roman Reigns happens? Jimmy and Solo versus him and Jay. The Rock versus Austin Theory, or The Rock and John Cena versus Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. The last two I love. The Rock and Austin Theory, absolutely would buy in for. The Austin Theory getting the rub, obviously. I would also like Cena and The Rock teaming up against Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. That is a match that a majority of people out there never bring up. That is a good one. I freaking love that idea. I honestly think if The Rock competes at WrestleMania 40, I think it could very well be against Austin Theory. The tag team is not a bad idea either. If Cena can wrestle, and the schedule allows it, I could see Rock and Cena teaming up. Why not? Waller and Theory, Stars of Tomorrow. Theory talking about that he beat John Cena at WrestleMania 39. There's enough content right there. What The Rock did to Austin Theory recently on SmackDown. I mean, you have so much right there that would not make the match feel random. I like those last two. If you force me to choose one of the two, I would go. If John Cena takes on Solo Sikoa at Crown Jewel, then I'll go with Rock Cena as a tag team for Mania. If Cena does not take on Solo Sikoa at Crown Jewel, then I could see Cena taking on Solo at WrestleMania. But I really believe we're going to get Solo versus Cena at Crown Jewel. It has not been announced yet. I don't know what's going to happen this Friday on SmackDown, but supposedly there's going to be some teasing of Cena and Solo. But, Crown Jewel is not for another 2+ weeks. So, let's see what happens with Cena and Solo at Crown Jewel. And then that'll pretty much give us an idea of what could happen at Mania. And speaking of Mania, we're going to finish up this episode with One Fall podcast. DT, why does Cody versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 so necessary? To him, it feels like a forced main event, like The Rock versus John Cena and Roman versus Brock. None or both face it from mediocre Raw post WrestleMania 6 months ago. I'm trying to figure out this wording. Now you want it for no reason 6 months again. Who wants to see that for the Universal title? In short words, 1 year for nothing. Don't disrespect my fanboy attitude, DT, but for me, and it's his opinion, it sounds like Chris Jericho is right when saying that WWE, sometimes it's stupid ideas from stupid creative, from bad creative. Look, I will tell you this, One Fall, you are not alone when it comes to people that don't think Cody versus Roman should happen anymore. I will tell you this, Rock versus Cena, 2012 to 2013, when they announced that main event a year in advance, I'm not going to lie. I have thought about that match when I think about Roman versus Cody now, but not in the same mindset as you. My mindset was, okay, WWE decided they were going to have this story run for a year. How they were going to get to point A to point B was obviously going to be determined by how things go along the way. But WrestleMania 39 was going to be similar to Dusty Rhodes in 1977, and WrestleMania 40 will be almost like Dusty Rhodes beating Harley Race in 1981 or whatever year it was. So they decided that they were going to run this for a year. Yes, it probably feels forced to a lot of people out there, but this is a story that they have decided to tell for a year. John Cena versus The Rock in 2012 was not this big feud that was going to continue for a full year. It was announced in advance to give you the marquee main event. And then along the way, little things would happen to kind of add friction to it. And then as we got towards WrestleMania at that time, that's when Rock and Cena were having these crazy confrontations on TV, when Cena was exposing Rock for having shit written on his arm and this and that. And it felt very personal at the time. But they decided they were going to do this in a year. And you got to realize this. Over the last 6 months, you could think in the back of your mind, if you're WWE creative, you could think in the back of your mind, okay, Sammy and Kevin Owens are going to win the tag titles, and eventually Jimmy is going to break out of the bloodline, and Jay's going to break out of the bloodline, and Solo's going to kind of tease leaving the bloodline, and then Jimmy will come back, and this and that. And then I think along the way, they realized, oh, let's do Jimmy versus Jay at WrestleMania 40. And 4 months ago, we were like, who the fuck wants to wait 9 months for that? Now it seems like that has to happen. My point is that along the way, things you truly do not know if it's going to work until it plays out on TV. Trust me, no one in WWE creative except for maybe Sami Zayn and Paul Heyman ever thought that Sammy would get over as big as he did when he was in the bloodline. You could not have predicted that innocent, persona mantra about Sami Zayn, just that innocence when he got his bloodline shirt. And, it was just, no one could have predicted that. So that obviously changes direction. Leading into WrestleMania 39, people wanted Sammy to win the championship. So they decided a year in advance Cody was going to finish the story at WrestleMania 40. And as we get closer, I think it's going to feel more of like a Rocky 2. And they're in Philly. This is kind of going to be Rocky 2. Of course, Apollo Creed and Rocky 1 didn't have outside interference, from Solo Creed. But the thing is that they decided to go a year. Not everybody wants a year-long storyline. I will tell you firsthand, and when Kevin and I put the archives of the DTKC show online, the fun thing about it is moments like this also. We could go back to the DTKC shows in 2012 and discuss how we initially felt when we heard that Cena and The Rock were going to be the main event a year later. How did we feel that we were going to have to wait a whole year for that to happen? So I get why you feel it's forced. I don't think it's forced. If it was not working, if Cody and Roman's confrontation a week ago did not feel special, if it did not create a buzz, it was so powerful that you had a whole bunch of journalists this past weekend reveal that there's no plans for The Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. There was never plans for that. After 39 late, there was never plans for that match, but people pushed that for ad revenue and attention. It was never in the cards. Now, because it's back on TV and it's being teased, you're going to see other people cut promos to insult Cody Rhodes, and they're going to bring up his failure at WrestleMania 39, and that's how you're going to reintroduce Cody wanting to finish the story against Roman. So right now it may feel a little forced to some people because people don't want to wait a whole year. But I personally think when we start going into Survivor Series, and especially the Royal Rumble, that's when all the parts will start working in sync. And I think almost everyone out there will at least, maybe not everybody wants Cody to win, but it will at least understand, like, okay, now I see why Cody needs to beat Roman at 40. Whether you agree with it or not, the story, the importance of Dusty, the importance of Dusty in NXT, the importance of Dusty in wrestling, the absolute love that people have for Dusty, this is very important in this story. It's not just about Cody Rhodes. It's about doing something in WWE that Dusty could not do. Because in WWE's eyes, they were always the biggest wrestling company in the world. And Dusty, unfortunately, never made it to that mountaintop. If we want to really be jerks about it, split hairs, Dusty Rhodes was not a full-time wrestler in the WWF in 1977. Dusty was just here in New York temporarily, because he was here regionally, and, he would leave and go to Georgia or Texas or Florida, this and that. So if he was a full-time wrestler here for a couple of years in New York, I don't mean here at WWE. I don't work for WWE. When I say here, I mean here in New York. If he was here in New York wrestling for the WWF on a regular basis for a couple of years and never given the title, that's different. But Dusty was always a part-timer. None of us, I wasn't a wrestling fan until 79, and even at that time, I still didn't understand it completely. But by 82, 83, when I totally understood wrestling, even though I was very young, no one, even when Dusty would make a rare appearance in the Garden, because he would wrestle in the Garden in the early 80s. I have a video clip of him in 84 beating up, I think, Samoa number 3. It's on my YouTube channel somewhere. But he was a special attraction. No one that I knew, and even I, never ever said back in the 80s, oh, Dusty should have been WWF champion. Nobody. Even when Dusty came back with the polka dots, nobody ever envisioned him to have any gold. He was feuding with Macho King and others, but he was a special attraction. So if you really want to split hairs, Dusty was never going to finish the story in the WWF because Dusty was never a full-time guy in the WWF. But having that accolade, even for a hot minute, short time, is still better than nothing. Cody will reach that mountaintop. And Cody is one of the top ambassadors in wrestling today. He is arguably the top ambassador for WWF. If Roman was not as part-time as he is, Roman probably would be close to the top. Cena is there, Bianca is there, there are others, but Cody will finish this story. If he doesn't, it'll be looked at as one of the most epic failures of the 21st century. WWF, Cody would be nuts to come back and do a 1.5-year storyline or, 16-month storyline and fail twice. No one will want to see it for a third time. It's either all or bust of WrestleMania 40. And it's not going to be a bust. So that's it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this Q&A mailbag. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I will be back with your next mailbag. Probably in 2 weeks, we'll record it. And then we'll stream it the following week. I like to do it that way. This way I could do a little research and think about my answers and plan. And, we always try to do a cutoff a few days early. And I'll let everybody know at least a week in advance when the next one is. This way you'll get an opportunity to send in a question that we could talk about. I want to thank everybody who gave me these topics for this episode. Feedback always appreciated. Keep supporting DonTony.com. That is the lifeline. Our YouTube channel as well. Our Patreon channel, patreon.com/DonTony. That is the Patreon for the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show. Right now, there's about 3 years of archives up there of Kev and I. Plus, there's probably about 800 or 900 Patreon episodes that Kev and I have done, separate over the last 6-7 years that have never been made public. So if you want to sign up, you can get access to well over 1,000 episodes that are not online right now. And then starting November, we're going to start bringing back the DTKC show from 2005 to 2020, because those 15 years are not online right now. So I just have to talk to Kevin, figure out how we're going to do this. Again, it's not easy. You're talking over 1,000 episodes, and it gets very expensive to host. So we got to figure out how we're going to do it. But it is coming back, and you'll get to check out content. You'll hear me in the hotline scene going back more than 20 years ago. It's pretty wild to realize how many years we've been doing this, but it's going to be a nice, fun ride to go back at that time and react to what TNA was like when it first came out. When Cena, before he was Super Cena, he was still doing Thugonomics when he first debuted, when the NWO came back to the WWE, and so much shit, man. My God, even before TNA started, we got hotline reports talking about shit. Man, that's going to be a fun ride. It's going to be hard because I got to, I can't just put them back online. We have to clean them up a little bit. The audio quality 20 years ago was not very good. And we got to make sure that everything is okay for 2023 standards. So we don't want it to be an ear sore for a lot of people. But I'm out here. Much love as always, everyone. I'll catch you all again soon. Ciao.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster. For me to live any other way was nuts. To me, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If I wanted something, I just took it. I ran everything. I paid the bills. I paid the host. I even paid the masked maniac. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. We always called each other good fellas. You would always hear from somebody. You're gonna like Don Tony. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us. But if you're part of my crew, nobody ever tells you they're gonna get rid of you. It doesn't happen that way. There weren't any arguments or curses like in the movies. See, your haters come with smiles. They come as your friends, the people who've claimed they care the most for your life. And now that's all over. And that's the best part. Today everything is different. There's lots of action. I don't have to wait around for everything like everyone else. Oh, I didn't get the vaccine? Fuck you, vaccine me. Oh, your delivery guy has COVID? Fuck you, feed me. Right after I moved here, I ordered egg noodles and ketchup, and I got spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm no longer an average nobody, while they get to live the rest of their lives like a bunch of schnooks.